Hello and welcome to the Inspiration and Enlightenment Slot Talk. Today I want to talk about emotional epidemics like anxiety, anger and depression. Emotions like fear and aggression are supposed to come and go, but if they stay, we get chronic emotions. For example, aggression turns into anger and fear into anxiety. So how do we get chronic emotions and why do so many people have them nowadays? Normally, only sense impressions trigger emotions, like fast approaching objects trigger the fight-flight reaction. Standing at a precipice triggers fear and rotten food triggers disgust. Emotions are controlled by hormones. No hormones, no emotions. For example, in case our brain detects danger, the hypothalamus alerts the adrenaline glands, which issue adrenaline, and we get aggressive and our body gets ready to fight. Same with fear and disgust and other emotions. We are born with some emotional reactions, for example, loneliness. In case babies don't feel the presence of their mothers, they cry. But our body also learns emotional reactions. For example, if a child burns itself on a hot stove, the hippocampus will store that information, and every time the child comes close to a hot object, it will trigger the hypothalamus, which will then issue the respective hormones, fear hormones. Unlike animals, we can imagine and perceive ideas. Imagination and ideas are the root of the success of our human species. But our evolved brain is a two-edged sword because those images and ideas can also trigger emotions, just like experiences. Now, two things happen. The first thing is that imagination catalyzes or boosts emotions. So let's say your boss tells you, meet your quota or I'll fire you. Yeah, that's a threat, and that threat causes an involuntary emotional reaction, which is worry or fear. That emotional wave will usually fade after some time and after your boss is out of sight. The thing is that at that moment, you may do the mistake of imagining losing your job, and that image will trigger more fear hormones. You may even imagine what happens after you lost your job, so that you will be out of money, that you will lose your car and your house and your spouse, and so imagination and fear spirals out of control. Something that never happens with animals. The second thing that happens is that ideas and images can cause chronic emotions. So unlike dangerous situations, ideas and images stay. And they trigger continuously hormones, and those hormones continuously cause emotions. So for example, if citizens accept the idea that immigrants threaten their natures, culture and security, these people's hypothalamus will issue adrenaline or other hormones every time they think about that, every time they think this particular idea. And they may do so many times a day. Now, what makes matters worse is that such ideas will usually spawn other thoughts and other ideas, which also trigger fear and worry. So they will create a body of thoughts that create a body of negative emotions. And what makes matters even worse is that such ideas will take root in the subconsciousness and they will do their work there unnoticed. Et voila, we get chronic emotions. So the result of such fearful and aggressive ideas and images are the chronic emotions. And we have quite a few of them. We fear world overpopulation, we fear losing our jobs, we fear workplace intrigues, We fear immigrants, we fear the Chinese economy, obesity, death, and whatnot. So fear turns into anxiety, and aggression or irritation turns into anger. Those chronic emotions then lead to secondary disorders, for example, depression, or eating disorders, substance abuse, attention deficit disorders, stress, obsessive compulsory disorders, and eventually also physical disorders like, the very common high blood pressure. We just came out of an idealistic era that lasted 2000 years. During this era, institutions monopolized emotional manipulation. So Catholicism, fascism, communism, they all had their respective ideas and ideals, and also enemy images, enemy pictures, and exercised their particular emotional manipulation. These monopolies are broken, and nowadays everybody manipulates everybody emotionally. Advertisers, politicians, colleagues, even friends and family members use ideas and images to manipulate us. Social media then took the emotional manipulation to a new level. One reason for that is that social media abusers can remain more or less anonymous, and because of that they don't hold back like advertising firms and politicians do, who are still somewhat accountable or can be held accountable. Another reason is that emotional images and ideas lose their edge quickly, and people come up with faker and gloomier manipulations to keep their social media ratings up. The third reason is that if sharing reaches a critical mass, people start believing in them, and that's the curse of common sense, and that's what happened with that flat earth theory. And last but not least, the worst thing happens then is when politicians and advertisers team up with social media abusers. So again, two things trigger emotions. That's sense impressions, which is natural, and certain ideas or images. So in the first case, the solution is rationality. So if you experience something and that scares you, you got to take a step back and calm down and analyze what's happening to you. That's like a good habit how to deal with scary situations. And that's an old thing, and we do this in thousands of years. And incidentally, 2000 years ago, the Romans turned that attitude into a philosophy, the Stoicism. And the idea of Stoicism is very simple. Keep your cool when things get scary. And do anger and anxiety management. In the case of chronic emotions, we need to remove ourselves from the influence of those emotional ideas and images. So the first step is we need to shield ourselves from emotional manipulations in news, social media, advertising, and politics, propaganda. So for example, every time you come across a social media post that causes those negative emotions of anxiety or anger, just pause, step back, and analyze what tactic is behind, emotional manipulative tactic is behind that post. Is it a shame tactic, a blame tactic, an anger tactic, or a scare tactic? What is it? So, and after you understood what tactic is actually behind that post, then analyze the post's agenda. Is it a commercial agenda? Is it politics? Is it racism? Or is it a religious agenda? And when you know that, what's the agenda and what's the tactic behind that post, you already know enough to distance yourself from this kind of stuff. And the second step is, of course, that you need to declutter your subconsciousness from these emotional ideas or images. For example, old school religious scare tactics like hell and stuff like that. Think of those ideas and images as mental contaminations of your subconsciousness that can cause mental discomfort like anxiety, but also serious disorders like OCD or high blood pressure. And you need to find ways to get them out of your system. That's psychological and enlightenment work. And for that, there are many exercises, for example, recapitulation and meditation. At the same time you get rid of those harmful ideas and images, you should also acquire new beneficial ideas. That's the old Enlightenment axiom of solve et coagule, which means disassemble and assemble. And you do that by learning Enlightenment principles. For example, the old school religious idea that we are natural born sinners breeds a host of thoughts that cause anxiety and shame. You can replace that with the truth that we are natural born prophets, and that we have access to wisdom and love, and that we can manifest those in our lives. Or you can embrace the idea that we are immortal souls, which takes away the fear of death and the anxieties that come with it. And if you do that work, and that work is tedious and unpleasant, your body becomes healthy and your mind becomes happy. Thank you for watching this episode of the Inspiration and Enlightenment Slow Talk. Please help spreading the light with a share and a like. And don't forget to subscribe. Love and light.